The Rockies will be the new home of the MLB, so how do the voting laws in Colorado compare with Georgia? This comes as former President Trump says the voting reforms in Georgia don't go far enough. And Florida's governor pushing back against the TV program 60 Minutes criticism on his state's vaccine rollout. He blasts media for changing the narrative. Tune in to Deep Dive as we explore these topics and more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. The baseball saga continues to unfold. Major League Baseball has chosen a new home, Colorado. That's after it pulled out of Georgia last week, deeming the new voting laws restrictive. But there's already pushback online, as some note Colorado's voting laws seem to be more restrictive than Georgia's in certain regards. But before we get into that, what exactly is in Georgia's election law? It requires a hotline where Georgians can report illegal election activities and voter suppression. It requires around-the-clock surveillance of ballot drop boxes and calls for ballots to be printed on security paper for authentication. The absentee ballot drop boxes now have to be secured inside buildings and only accessible when those buildings are open for business. It limits the number of drop boxes to the lesser of one for every 100,000 registered voters or the number of advance voting locations in the county. And absentee ballots are to be removed from the drop boxes each voting day by a team of at least 2 people who fill out a ballot transfer form, which includes their identities and an affirmation that the drop box was closed after the ballots were retrieved. And election officials who receive the ballots are also required to fill out a transfer form. These absentee ballot transfer forms are to be a public record. And it does away with signature matching in favor of verifying voter identities using the driver's license and state ID numbers. Now, people without either form of ID can submit the last 4 digits of their Social Security number. The Georgia law allows the use of expired IDs for voting. And also in the bill are rules that make it a felony for unauthorized people to handle ballots or unseal absentee ballot envelopes. And Georgian voters are barred from applying for absentee ballots multiple times. It also bars the use of food and drinks for the people in line waiting to vote as a form of undue influence on voters. The law also seeks to bolster transparency. It does this by granting the Secretary of State the power to inspect absentee ballot envelopes. It makes scanned ballot images public record, and election officials are now prohibited from pausing ballot counting until all of the ballots have been processed. And also, an independent panel will review precincts that don't submit their results by 5 p.m. the day after election. Some claim the bill makes it harder to vote. For early voting, the law shrinks the period during which people can apply for mail-in ballots to 78 days before an election, instead of originally 180 days. And another change, Georgia voters will now be able to vote during 2 Saturdays prior to an election, with localities having the option to expand poll operating hours from 7 to 7. Before, the language was regular business hours. And precincts have the option of opening polls for 1 or 2 Sundays to the early voting period. And requests for a ballot must now be received 11 days prior to election. Mail-in ballots will now be sent out 25 to 29 days before an election instead of 45 to 49 days. And the law expands from 5 to 10 days, the period when people confined to a hospital can cast an absentee vote. This bill does not change voting hours on Election Day, and it cuts the amount of time people have to apply for mail-in ballots just about in half. That's while it adds extra hours and days that the polls are open. While some are clamoring the reforms are too much, former President Trump issued a statement Tuesday saying the reforms don't go far enough. He said Georgia's election reform law is far too weak and soft to ensure real ballot integrity. Election Day is supposed to be Election Day, not election week or election month. Far too many days are given to vote. Too much mischief can happen during this very long period of time. Trump says the new law doesn't eliminate no-excuse mail-in voting, and he criticized it for removing signature verification. Now going back to MLB, why Colorado? Major League Baseball said it chose Denver because the Colorado Rockies, the state's baseball team, was already in the bidding process to host a future All-Star game. It adds both the Colorado governor and mayor have committed to provide the necessary support for this year's game to be held there. MLB Commissioner Robert Manfred said in a statement, Major League Baseball is grateful to the Rockies, the city of Denver, and the state of Colorado for their support of this summer's All-Star Game. We appreciate their flexibility and enthusiasm to deliver a first-class event for our game and the region. We look forward to celebrating our sport's best players and entertaining fans around the world. Both the mayor and governor have since issued statements in response. The governor's spokeswoman saying the governor knows that Colorado is the best home for the All-Star Game, especially because Colorado also has strong laws that enable voters to cast their legal ballots any way they choose, including through mail or in person. Adding the governor will be burning up the phones the next few days to see if there is an opening to bring the All-Star Game to Denver. And the mayor saying we are proud to welcome it and to talk about the progressive voting system in Denver that is bent on making sure no one is abridged from their right to vote. So how do Georgia's voting laws compare to Colorado? While Colorado is all for mail-in ballots, its ID requirements, voting days, and hours are all quite similar to Georgia. Colorado allows people to register to vote on Election Day. It automatically sends out ballots to everyone, as Colorado is a vote-by-mail state. And poll hours are from 7 to 7, and it requires ID for in-person voting, although it doesn't have to be a photo ID. And Colorado has 15 days of voting. Georgia, meanwhile, has 17 days of voting. But Georgia does not allow same-day voter registration. It does require photo ID, and it still allows no-excuse absentee voting. And now 200 companies signed a joint statement signaling their opposition to election reform bills, but they didn't specify which bill or which state. Now let's move on over to the Sunshine State. Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis lambasting the TV program 60 Minutes report on his state's vaccine rollout. He said at a press conference on Tuesday they cut out everything that showed that their narrative was a piece of horse manure. The report in question left out 356 words from his 423-word answer. DeSantis went on to say, and it shows you how dishonest these are smear merchants. That is why nobody trusts corporate media. They are a disaster in what they're doing. They knew what they were doing was a lie. I knew what they were doing was a lie. Everybody here knows what they were doing is a lie. They know that we know they're lying, and yet they continue to lie. Over the weekend, 60 Minutes ran a story criticizing him for offering a contract to the supermarket chain Publix in an effort to distribute the vaccine to communities throughout Palm Beach.
What you're saying is wrong.
The program suggested that the governor had ulterior motives for the strategy he took. But only part of the governor's reply made it into the 60 Minutes story. The Democratic mayor of Palm Beach County issued a statement Monday accusing 60 Minutes of intentionally deceiving their viewers. Much of what DeSantis had to say never made it into the segment. Here's an image showing in bold the parts left out. The cut version that ended up running shows DeSantis saying that is a false narrative. I met with the county mayor, I met with the administrator, I met with all the folks in Palm Beach County, and I said, here's some of the options. We can do more drive-through sites, we can give more to hospitals, we can do the Publix, and they said, we think that would be the easiest thing for our residents. But here's what he actually said. That is a false narrative. So first of all, when we did, the first pharmacies that had it were CVS and Walgreens. And they had a long-term care mission, so they were going to the long-term care facilities. They got the vaccine in the middle of December. They started going to long-term care facilities the third week of December to do LTCs. So that was their mission. That was very important, and we trusted them to do that. As we got into January, we wanted to expand the distribution points. So yes, you had the counties, you had some drive-through sites, you had hospitals that were doing a lot. But we wanted to get it into communities more. So we reached out to other retail pharmacies. Publix, Walmart, obviously CVS and Walgreens had to finish that mission. And we said, we are going to use you as soon as you are done with that. For the Publix, they were the first one to raise their hand and say they were ready to go. And you know what? We did it on a trial basis. I had 3 counties. I actually showed up that weekend and talked to seniors across 4 different Publix. How was the experience? Is this good? Should you think this is a way to go? and it was 100% positive, so we expanded it. And then folks liked it, and I can tell you, if you look at a place like Palm Beach County, they were kind of struggling at first in terms of the senior numbers. I met with the county mayor, I met with the administrator, I met with all the folks in Palm Beach County, and I said, here is some of the options. We can do more drive-through sites, we can give more to hospitals, we can do the Publix, we can do this. They calculated that 90% of their seniors live within 1.5 miles of a Publix, and they said, we think that would be the easiest thing for our residents. So we did that, and what ended up happening was you had 65 Publix in Palm Beach. Palm Beach is one of the biggest counties, one of the most elderly counties. We've done almost 75% of the seniors in Palm Beach. And the reason is because you have the strong retail footprint. So our way has been multifaceted. It has worked, and we're also now very much expanding CVS and Walgreens now that they've completed the long-term care mission. The Democrat mayor of Palm Beach responded to 60 Minutes by saying the reporting was not just based on bad information, it was intentionally false. Adding, we have confronted this pandemic for over a year. Our residents, like all Americans, are tired. And the media is making it worse. They are hell-bent on dividing up for cheap views and clicks. 60 Minutes should be ashamed. CBS spokesman responded saying, as we always do for clarity, 60 Minutes used the portion of the governor's over 2-minute response that directly addressed the question from the correspondent. And now several well-known Democrats are defending DeSantis. Former Democratic State Senator Jared Moskowitz called the report, quote, absolute malarkey. He now runs the State Division of Energy Management. And the current mayor of Palm Beach County called the report intentionally false. Amid the fallout, he told CBS 12 he was the one who asked DeSantis to let Publix distribute vaccine in his county, not the other way around. And DeSantis says he's not backing down, saying, I know corporate media thinks that they can just run over people. You aren't running over this governor, I'm punching back. He adds, you come down to our state and you try to smear people. We are going to bite back and we're going to hold you accountable. This is not over by any stretch of the imagination. But what do you think? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and see you soon.